Hi, and welcome to episode 15 of CultureWatch Radio. I'm Andrew Smith, and with me is Bill Muhlenberg. A lot's been happening on the abortion front over the past few days, particularly with a man called Troy Newman.
It certainly has. Not sure how anybody could have missed it, actually. It made quite a few headlines, both here and overseas. Just what we would have thought was an innocuous pro-life speaker from America coming over to do a series of conferences, meetings, all good, no problems, visa granted months ago. And then, mid-flight, as he's heading over here, he discovers the visa's been canceled. Evidently, a Labor Party gal who is pro-abortion made a lot of pretty specious claims about him, that he was dangerous and a risk to the country. He would put women and doctors at risk, and these really rather scurrilous lies were enough to convince our immigration minister to give him the flick. So he got here, was detained, and a day or two later sent packing to go home without even setting foot on the country or patting one koala or wallaby or dingo. Quite a lousy vacation all up.
I can tell you, he couldn't even have a beer, even on the flight on the way home on the international leg. It was that bad. You know, Bill, this has been happening under a new immigration minister, Dutton, and the irony is that not last federal election, which came up very quickly, but the one before, all the pro-lifers in Brisbane put a lot of effort into getting him re-elected in the seat that he wanted to go back to in order that we could knock out, and we were successful at preventing an amnesties list member from Labor from getting in. And yet this sort of thing can still happen.
Yes, it is shocking. We're still kind of shaking our heads over this one. I mean, of course, as we've talked about on previous broadcasts, just recently we had the coup in the Liberal Party. We got a pro-life, pro-family, conservative prime minister stabbed in the back by somebody who isn't any of those things, a secular, trendy, progressive lefty. Malcolm Turnbull is now prime minister. And, of course, he's reshuffled the deck as well. Scott Morrison, the former immigration minister, who is still a Christian, pro-family and so on, he's been given the flick, and Dutton was put in his place. And the question is, if Scott and Tony were still at the helm, I can't for the life of me see how any of this would have happened. Troy would have come here, done his talks right now. It'd have been great, and, everything would be fine and dandy. But we have this new non-conservative, conservative party leader, new immigration minister, and now all of a sudden you can't even get a pro-life speaker to come out from overseas.
So a man like Troy Newman is viewed as a risk, but other much more dangerous activities were allowed to go ahead. In fact, one of them is happening on Monday. Yeah,
well, we've had quite a few things happening this weekend. We've had the shocking treatment of a peaceful and terrific man, Troy Newman, who's could be landing any second now in America if he hasn't already. But at the very same time, we've had several episodes. We've had, another shooting, another Islamic jihad attack on the streets of Australia, this time in Sydney, Parramatta. He had just come from a local mosque, had a gun in his hand, and started shooting and killing people. And also this weekend, we've got a Islamic Dawah or mission conference featuring the thoughts and ideas and writings of people who've been banned, some real terrorists who've been banned from coming to places like Britain and elsewhere because of their utterly reprehensible ideas, jihad, killing homosexuals, being allowed to beat your wife. This is kind of hardcore Islamic stuff. And here's a whole conference devoted to this weekend. The government seems to think that's fine, but somebody who cares about babies, well, sorry, you can't come here.
You know, a verse that gets a workout of late is Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil.
Well, that certainly is applicable, isn't it? Written 2,500 years ago, but it sounds like it's today. We have governments who are effectively turning virtues into vices and vices into virtues. They're awarding, promoting, making excuses for things like jihad. Our new prime minister and everybody on down has been saying what happened yesterday with this killer is, that's not Islam. We can't blame Islam for this. Everybody's making excuses for that. And yet here's somebody who wants to look after the most vulnerable and innocent of our members of society, the unborn, and we treat those people like criminals, like terrorists, and say, sorry, you can't come into our country. You're way too risky. So we allow the conferences to go ahead, pushing jihad. We allow all this to take place. I think Isaiah had it right, and we're living through it. Absolutely.
So the culture wars are hotting up big time, and we really can't allow ourselves to think that we will continue to exist and operate as we have culturally by default. So what is the prognosis for both Australia and the West?
Well, it's looking pretty grim at the moment, isn't it? People ask me this often, and my usual reply is I think it's going to get worse, at least in the short term. It may get better eventually, but then we have to be in for the long haul. In the days ahead, weeks, months, probably years, it's going to keep going this way, where people who stand up for babies are seen as enemies, as risks, as dangerous, as, terrorists even. Whereas those who are actual terrorists are being made excuses for in the whole bit. It's just spiraling out of control, not just Australia, America, Europe. It shows no sign of bottoming out either. That's the scary bit. So I really do think we need to have the long-term picture in view. It took Western civilization centuries to build up. Of course, it can be torn down overnight, which we're seeing now happen. So if the Lord should tarry and we got work to do, which we obviously have, well, it may be a very long job indeed to rebuild a culture of life, rebuild a culture of marriage and family. All of these things are under attack big time, and it's not going to change overnight. So we've got a job on our hands. As I keep telling people, we got work to do. We're called to be salt and light, and we need to keep at it.
And for those of you out there who are listening to this and you do want to stand up for what really is true and right, there's always more information and resources available at the Culture Watch website. And we'll see you again next week with another episode of Culture Watch Radio.